At the 150th anniversary gala of our family corporation, my grandfather roared into the microphone, "She'll always be part of our story, just not the chapters anyone reads." Everyone laughed as I smiled silently. Over 30 years, I bought silent shares, outlasted every rival. And when the time was right, I liquidated the entire fortune. The company was disbanded, the estates auctioned, the family trust dissolved. 3 generations of descendants lost their homes, their schools, their futures, and the family name was erased from every university, bank, and historical archive across the country. I was 13 when it happened. The gala was for the 150th anniversary of the Dandridge Group, our family company. It was a huge deal. Black tie, media coverage, local politicians, the whole thing. My mom made me wear this stiff suit that itched at the collar and squeezed my neck so tight I could barely swallow. The Four Seasons in Atlanta was lit up in gold. Our last name was everywhere. On banners on the screens printed on tiny napkins. Dandridge, 150 years of leadership, loyalty, and legacy. That was the tagline. I hated it. My mom, Christine, was tense the whole night. She smiled and greeted people like she was supposed to, but I could feel how fake it was. She didn't belong there, not really. Not in their eyes. She was the middle child, the only daughter, and she made the mistake of marrying my dad, a public school teacher. That one choice cut her out of everything. She was kicked off the board, got no dividends, no vote, and barely even a chair at the table anymore. But she still showed up. When my grandfather, Walter Dandridge Sr., stood at the podium, he was already half drunk. His voice boomed. He was the kind of man people pretended to love and feared behind closed doors. He told story after story about the early years of the company, about loyalty, sacrifice, bloodlines. He kept talking about true heirs and real commitment. Everyone clapped like sheep. Then he looked right at us. "She'll always be part of our story," he said, looking straight at my mother. Then he smiled a mean smile. "Just not the chapters anyone reads." The room exploded with laughter. Not just polite laughter. Real ugly laughter. A few of my cousins even clapped. My mom didn't react. She sipped her wine and smiled like it didn't sting. But it did. That moment never left me. I started planning when I was 17. I knew I wasn't welcome in the company, not officially. So I used a different last name, my dad's, and got a job in the mailroom during the summer. I listened. Watched. Took notes. I kept quiet. I asked questions that didn't seem too smart. I worked there off and on for years while studying economics at Georgia State. No one paid me any mind. I was just another intern, another nobody. But I was learning fast. I read every contract I could get my hands on, learned about the voting structure, the bylaws, the obscure rules written by my great-grandfather to protect against hostile outsiders. Funny thing is, I wasn't an outsider. Not really. But to them I always would be. That was their mistake. I started buying shares before I turned 25. Not big ones. Just small, silent shares from forgotten corners, old employees, estranged relatives, widows of board members. I never used my real name. I had a lawyer friend help me set up holding companies in Delaware, Nevada, and the Caymans. I used every paycheck I got. Lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with no air conditioning. Drove a 10-year-old Civic. Ate ramen and eggs most nights. But every time I got another 0.1%, I felt stronger. And no one noticed. Because while my cousins were buying boats and second homes, I was slowly taking their legacy away from them. One quiet signature at a time. By the time I was 40, I had more power than most of the board. My cousins were lazy. My uncles were too arrogant. They thought the name alone protected them. They ignored red flags, buried scandals, passed fake audits. They laughed about it over dinner at the country club. I watched. I waited. I knew about the embezzlement in Houston, the affair in legal, the unpaid taxes in Nevada. I gathered files, emails, screenshots. I backed up everything. I even hired a private investigator to dig into the worst of it. And I kept buying shares. Every time a Dandridge heir wanted cash for a divorce or a debt or a lawsuit, I was there, silent, discreet, helpful. They never once asked who was behind the offer. That's how much they underestimated me. By 2022 I had the majority. 51. For percent to be exact. The clause my great-grandfather wrote in 1931 gave me all I needed. If one shareholder crossed 51%, they could propose a full liquidation vote. No court needed. Just board approval. 2/3. I already had 6 votes lined up. Some I paid off. Some I threatened. One I exposed for insider trading unless he backed me. They caved. The vote passed. And just like that, the company was done. The collapse made headlines. The Dandridge Group, a 150-year empire, was over. Assets sold. Headquarters shut down. Estates auctioned off. Private schools our family built in California, Connecticut, and Texas closed. Teachers laid off. Students displaced. The Dandridge name was removed from every building, every scholarship, every historical record I could touch. I paid off universities to rename buildings. I had lawyers petition archives to delete honorary titles. Within 6 months, there wasn't a trace of us in any major institution. The family was furious. They tried to stop me, sued me, screamed on social media. But I had the paperwork. I had the votes. I had 30 years of dirt. And they had nothing. Some moved in with friends. Others sold their cars. One cousin asked for a job at a startup and lied about his last name. I found out and made sure they passed on his resume. I didn't want to punish them with violence. Just silence. Erasure. I wanted them to feel like they never mattered in the first place. The same way they made me and my mother feel all those years ago. For a while it felt clean. It felt like justice. But then the phone calls started. Blocked numbers. Messages left on encrypted apps. People I hadn't spoken to in decades suddenly wanted to talk. I ignored most of them. But one message got to me. It was from Aunt Valerie, the youngest of Walter's kids. She was the only one who ever treated my mom with even a shred of kindness. She didn't call to beg or blame. She just said, "They're planning something. Be careful. This isn't over." I didn't reply, but I listened. A week later, my apartment was broken into. They didn't take anything. Not my laptop, not the hard drives. Just my mother's old journals, the ones she left me after she passed. Pages torn out. Personal notes missing. That's when I knew they were looking for leverage. They were desperate now. I'd taken away their homes, their money, their status. But they still had one thing left: shame. They wanted to find something they could twist and use. Something to make me the villain. They tried to spin the media. Said I destroyed the company out of bitterness. That I manipulated sick board members. That I tricked old women into signing away shares. But it didn't work. The truth was too clean. The paper trail too perfect. Still, they kept trying. Then they went after my father. He was 73 and still teaching part-time at the community college. Just a quiet man living in a small house outside Decatur. He had nothing to do with any of it. But one day, someone broke his car window and left a dead crow in the passenger seat. Just a message. Just hate. That was when I changed. I stopped seeing them as idiots. I started seeing them as dangerous. I hired round-the-clock security. Switched homes. Changed my phone number. I traced their movements through private firms. Some were meeting in secret with lawyers, old advisors, and even international firms who specialized in reputation recovery. One of my cousins, Bryce, tried to get custody of my grandfather's estate retroactively through probate. Claimed I'd forged documents. I showed up to court with the original signatures, notarized statements, and even a deposition from a former legal aide who confirmed everything. Bryce's lawyer quit halfway through the hearing. It still wasn't over. The real twist came 6 months later. Turns out the Dandridge Group had one remaining holding company. An old shell in Wyoming. Almost nothing in it, just one property deed and a few patents no one had touched in decades. But somehow, it had never been included in the asset liquidation. And Bryce was trying to transfer it. Not sell it. Not cash it out. Transfer it to a new foundation. Under a different name. A way to rebuild what I destroyed using a loophole. I flew to Cheyenne the same week. Pulled the county records. Sure enough, he'd already filed paperwork. The Eastwood Legacy Trust. New logo. New brand. New mission. Same bloodline. Same poison. I knew what had to be done. I couldn't just erase the past. I had to burn the roots. So I started digging again. Deeper this time. Old trust documents. Hidden transfers. Unreported income from the early 2000s. I found enough to bury every living Dandridge under IRS audits for the next 10 years. I filed every report anonymously. Then I went after the law firm that helped file the Eastwood paperwork. Leaked proof they were tied to laundering donations through phony nonprofits. The trust froze its own assets before they even launched. Bryce went silent. And this time I knew it was over. Or at least I thought it was. That's when I got a letter. Not an email. Not a text. An actual letter. No return address. Just 3 sentences written in shaky, almost childlike handwriting. You think this ends with you. But blood remembers. And blood will answer. I read it 3 times. And I laughed. Because blood might remember. But I had erased the name it came from. After I got that letter I kept it. I didn't show it to anyone. Didn't tell my lawyer. Didn't forward it to security. I just folded it and put it in a drawer next to my mother's last photo. Something about it felt different. It wasn't legal. It wasn't strategic. It was personal raw. That scared me more than any lawsuit. Because that meant someone out there wasn't trying to win. They were trying to hurt me. The next twist came from a place I didn't expect. My mom's side of the family. I barely knew them. She had cut off most of her relatives after marrying my dad. But apparently, one of her old cousins Lyle had been contacted by a mutual business interest recently. They offered to buy out land my mother inherited in northern Georgia. Land no one ever touched. Land that wasn't worth much on paper. But the buyer's name caught Lyle's attention. It was Rebecca Dandridge. I hadn't heard her name in over 20 years. Rebecca was my cousin. One of the few Dandridge girls allowed near the board. When we were kids we used to play together at family reunions. She was smart, quiet, sharper than the rest. She didn't laugh at my mom at the gala. She also disappeared from the public sometime around 2008. Right after her dad Uncle Dean got caught in a bribery case. The family cut her off for speaking to investigators. I assumed she was gone for good. Apparently she wasn't. She was just waiting. I tracked her down through an LLC in Asheville. She was running a private consulting firm. Very clean. Very careful. The firm specialized in legacy restructuring. Basically, rebranding fallen companies and rich families. She didn't reply to my calls. I sent a formal request through her website pretending to be a client. I got one line back. You can't erase what you never understood. That's when I realized. Rebecca wasn't rebuilding the Dandridge name. She was rewriting it. Using the leftover shell companies. The untouched land. The buried patents. And worse, she was doing it with my mother's inherited property as leverage. If I didn't move fast, she'd turn the ashes I left behind into something new. Something clean. Something the public would accept. The Dandridge name, but not as we knew it. Sanitized. Rebranded. Free of guilt. I flew to Asheville the next morning. No lawyers. No PR firm. Just me. I found her office. 2nd floor above a used bookstore. She opened the door herself. Still had the same eyes. Same cold stare. You're really going through all this just to kill a name? She asked me. No, I said. I already killed it. I'm here because you're trying to resurrect a lie. She stepped aside. Let me in. Her office was full of whiteboards, maps, and legal charts. She had been planning for years, maybe longer than me. She didn't want revenge. Not like I did. She wanted control. Over 2 hours we talked. Fought. I laid it all out, what I knew, what I'd done, what I'd found. She didn't deny anything. Then she said something that stopped me cold. You think you're the only one they humiliated? They killed my future when they made me choose between ethics and inheritance. You erased them. Good. But I'm not bringing them back. I'm building something better. I didn't trust her. But I believed her. She offered me a deal. She'd shut it down. All of it. The trust, the foundation, the rebrand on one condition. I'd have to walk away from everything. No more digging. No more surveillance. No more chess moves. You've won, she said. Stop acting like you haven't. I left without agreeing. But the seed was planted. A week later, I checked the holding companies tied to her name. Every single one was closed. Land transfers canceled. Patents returned to public domain. Shells dissolved. True to her word. But that didn't mean it was over. Because 3 weeks after that, someone filed a civil lawsuit in Montana. The plaintiff? Unknown descendant of the Dandridge Group. Estate dispute filed under seal. I knew what it meant. Someone, maybe more than one, was still out there trying to resurrect the ghost. Only this time they weren't coming at me directly. They were going after the legacy I had destroyed, and trying to claim it never died in the first place. And if they could convince a court or the public that I'd done it illegally, then everything I'd done would come undone. Everything I erased would start to reappear. Piece by piece. I knew the lawsuit in Montana was bait. It wasn't about money. There was no estate left. It was a move to challenge the legality of the dissolution. If they could prove I misled the board, or that shares were acquired through coercion, they could start unrolling the liquidation piece by piece. And the moment I saw the filing, I knew who was behind it. It wasn't Rebecca. It was Bryce. The same cousin who tried to resurrect the family legacy through that fake foundation. The same one who got caught faking filings in Wyoming. He wasn't after the company anymore. He was after me. Bryce always had a problem with losing. Even when we were kids, he'd throw fits during board games. He once broke his own nose punching a wall after my team beat his in a charity golf match. And now that I'd destroyed the thing he'd spent his life coasting off, he wanted to destroy me. I flew to Montana. I wasn't going to let him win in a courtroom he picked. The judge was sharp, quiet, and didn't care about our last name. I liked him immediately. Bryce's legal team presented old documents, selective ones, out of context. One of the lawyers actually said, "Our client believes Mr. Dandridge used grief and personal vendettas to manipulate legacy structures." I didn't flinch. When it was my turn, I gave them everything. Emails, timelines, testimony from former board members, financial audits from neutral third parties, evidence of how I bought every share legally, under market value, with clean money. Then I dropped the real hammer. I'd found a recording from 6 years earlier. A private dinner Bryce had with a former VP. I paid to recover the audio from a corrupt laptop. In it, Bryce openly discussed how he planned to take over the family name once the old man dies, and how he wanted to choke out the weak bloodlines like Christine's branch. My mother. The courtroom went dead silent. The judge excused us early. Said he'd rule in 2 weeks. He didn't need 2 weeks. We got the call 3 days later. Case dismissed. With prejudice. Meaning Bryce couldn't bring it back ever. He was done. But I wasn't. Because karma doesn't end in a courtroom. Starts there. I called Bryce the next morning. He didn't answer. I left a voicemail. "I'm not suing you. I'm not taking anything else. I'm just going to make sure you stay where you are for the rest of your life. Small. Bitter. Forgotten." Then I followed through. I leaked the court documents to the press. Not just about the lawsuit, about the foundation scam, the forged trust filings, the audio. Every skeleton. Every lie. His wife left him. His 2 kids who were in private school under the last Dandridge grant were pulled out. The only job offer he had left was as a consultant for a company that folded 2 months later. He moved into a duplex in Helena. I checked. His neighbors didn't even know who he was. That was the final twist. He wanted legacy. I gave him silence. Rebecca kept her promise. She disappeared again. Maybe she meant it when she said she wasn't building the Dandridge name. Maybe she saw what it cost us all. Either way, I never heard from her again. As for me, I didn't come out clean. Not fully. I lost years of my life to this. I missed real chances to love people, to build something with meaning. My mother never got to see what I did for her. She died before I crossed the 40% threshold. I never got to tell her how I never forgot that night at the gala. Sometimes I think about what it all means. I didn't do this just for justice. Not really. I did it because I wanted them to feel what we felt for decades. The shame. The exile. The silence. And I got what I wanted. But it didn't make me happy. What I did made me powerful. It made me feared. It erased a corrupt legacy. But it didn't bring my mom back. And it didn't give me peace. Only quiet. The Dandridge name is gone. Wiped off buildings, banks, trusts, and schools.
No statues. No plaques.
No history books. Only a trail of silent survivors pretending they were never part of it. And me? I live alone in a house I paid for in cash. No one knows my name. No one knocks on my door. But sometimes late at night I play that old voicemail again. My mother's voice. I'm proud of you. Even if they never say it. And in that moment I remember exactly why I did it. Not for revenge, but for silence. Because silence was all they ever gave us. And now it's all they have left.